The peeling walls told stories no one wanted to hear. St. Vincent Hospital, a name that had once been synonymous with hope, now only echoed in the emptiness of poorly lit corridors. The smell of disinfectant mixed with mold permeated every corner, as if death itself had taken residence there. 3 floors of abandonment. Broken equipment piled like metal skeletons. Nurses who worked without pay for months, driven only by a force they couldn't explain themselves. The patients, forgotten by the system, abandoned by society, waited on improvised stretchers. Rain beat against the cracked windows. Each drop seemed to mark the time that was lost, the lives that slowly drained away. On the 3rd floor, an entire wing had been sealed off due to lack of resources. The locked doors kept secrets of suffering that the world preferred not to see. The fluorescent lights flickered intermittently, casting dancing shadows on the worn linoleum floors. Wheelchairs with broken wheels stood abandoned in corners like monuments to neglect. The elevator had been out of order for 2 years, forcing families to carry their loved ones up narrow, dimly lit staircases. It was Thursday when everything changed. No one expected that those walls would witness something that would make the entire planet stop to watch. Raphael was only 7 years old, but carried the weight of someone who already knew death up close. Advanced stage leukemia. His frail body rested on a bed that had already sheltered dozens of other tragic stories. His parents, 2 rural workers, slept on the cold floor beside the bed, taking turns in vigil shifts. Chemotherapy had stopped 2 weeks ago. There were no more medications. No more medical hope. Raphael spent his days looking through the dirty window, watching pigeons that flew free while he withered away trapped between 4 peeling walls. His small hands held a wooden crucifix, the only gift he had received on his last birthday. His thin fingers traced the figure of crucified Christ, as if trying to understand why suffering had chosen such a small child. The nurses avoided his gaze, knowing there was nothing more they could do. The boy's breathing had become labored, each inhale a struggle against the disease consuming him from within. His once bright eyes, now sunken and ringed with dark circles, still held flickers of curiosity when butterflies landed on the windowsill. The faded Superman pajamas he wore hung loose on his diminishing frame, a painful reminder of childhood dreams that would never come to pass. His mother cried silently in the bathroom. His father walked the corridors like a ghost, carrying the guilt of not being able to save his own son. Raphael remained there, breathing slowly, counting each heartbeat as if they were precious coins that would soon run out. No one noticed when he entered. Without entourage, without fanfare, without cameras. Just a man in a red cassock who walked through the corridors as if he knew every corner of that forgotten place. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle had arrived at St. Vincent Hospital on a grey autumn afternoon. His steps echoed softly on the worn floor. There was no hurry in his movements, only a presence that seemed to make the air lighter. Patients who could lift their heads watched him with curiosity. Some recognized the gentle face from the news, others just felt that something different had entered that place. He stopped in front of each bed. His hands gently touched faces marked by pain. He didn't utter empty words of consolation. He just offered his silent presence. His almond-shaped eyes reflected each suffering as if it were his own. The Cardinal's weathered hands spoke of decades spent in service. Each wrinkle told stories of prayers whispered in the darkness, of tears shed for strangers who had become family. His red zucchetto sat slightly askew on his graying hair, and his simple black shoes showed the wear of countless journeys to places where hope had nearly died. On the 3rd floor, upon finding the sealed doors, Tagle remained motionless for long minutes. His hands rested on the peeling wood, as if he could feel the pain of those who had been forgotten even by the forgotten. Silence was his most powerful prayer. Raphael was sleeping when he felt a presence nearby. He slowly opened his eyes and saw a man in red sitting in a chair beside his bed. He wasn't a doctor. He knew that. He wasn't a nurse. That too. It was something different, something his child's heart recognized immediately. Tagle didn't speak. He just extended his hand and gently touched the boy's feverish forehead. His fingers were soft, like those of his grandmother who had died the year before. Raphael felt something warm course through his body. It wasn't the fever that consumed him, but something like peace. The cardinal took a small wooden rosary from his pocket. Its beads were simple, worn by time and prayer. He placed it between Raphael's frail hands, wrapping the small fingers with his own. There they remained, two hearts connected by faith amid abandonment. Time seemed suspended in that small room. The usual hospital sounds, beeping monitors, distant conversations, footsteps in hallways, faded into insignificance. Only the boy's shallow breathing and the cardinal's silent prayers filled the space. Outside, afternoon light filtered through grimy windows, casting gentle patterns on the cracked walls. Raphael's parents awakened and found that scene. His mother covered her mouth to not cry aloud. His father bowed his head, recognizing that something sacred was happening. Tagle remained there for a full hour, in absolute silence, just holding the hands of the child approaching eternity. The next morning, Tagle returned. This time, he brought something no one expected. In his hands, he carried a small worn leather suitcase, the same one he had used for years in his travels around the world. He went to the reception and asked to speak with the hospital administration. 15 minutes later, news spread through the corridors like fire in dry straw. The cardinal had donated all his personal belongings to the hospital. Bank account, investments, even his private residence. Everything transferred to that forgotten institution. He would keep only the clothes on his body and the faith he carried in his heart. But that wasn't all. Tagle had made an even more radical decision. He would move to the hospital. Sleep there, eat there, live there until every patient had the care they deserved. He set up a simple bed in an abandoned room in the basement, among dusty filing boxes. The hospital administrator, a weary woman named Elena who had fought bureaucracy for 15 years, wept openly when she understood the magnitude of the gesture. For the first time in months, she felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. The cardinal's donation would cover medications for 6 months, repairs to critical equipment, and salaries for the unpaid staff. The news leaked to the local press that same afternoon. A suspicious journalist went to investigate and found the cardinal sweeping the floor of the pediatric ward. His hands, accustomed to blessing multitudes, held an old broom as if it were a sacred scepter. The first photo was published in the local newspaper on Friday. It showed Tagle feeding Raphael with a plastic spoon, the same utensil used by the poorest patients. The image traveled through social media like an emotional tsunami. In 24 hours, the entire world knew St. Vincent Hospital. Donations began to arrive. First came Catholics from the region. Then came people from other religions. Atheists, agnostics, skeptics, all touched by something that transcended beliefs. Medications, equipment, money, but mainly something more precious: hope. Volunteer doctors appeared on Monday. Nurses came from distant cities. Medical students cancelled their vacations to work for free. The hospital that had been dying for years began to pulse with new life. Tagle continued sweeping the corridors every morning, as if nothing had changed. Celebrity endorsements flooded social media. Musicians dedicated songs to Raphael. Artists painted murals on the hospital's exterior walls. A major pharmaceutical company pledged a year's supply of pediatric cancer medications. The forgotten hospital had become a symbol of humanity's capacity for goodness. Raphael received his first new medication on a rainy Tuesday. His cheeks gained some color. His eyes lost that fog of surrender. He held the wooden rosary and smiled, the first genuine smile his parents had seen in months. The miracle wasn't just in the medicine, but in the recovered dignity. It was on a Wednesday that everything reached its peak. Raphael had improved significantly, but an unexpected complication brought him back to critical condition. The doctors worked all night, but at 6 in the morning they admitted there was nothing more to be done. The boy had only hours to live. Tagle was in the room when Raphael opened his eyes for the last time. The boy, with his final strength, took the wooden rosary from his neck and placed it in the cardinal's hands. Then, with a movement that surprised everyone, he kissed the forehead of the man who had changed his last days on earth. The nurse who witnessed the scene couldn't contain her tears. She took her phone and photographed the exact moment when Raphael, smiling, closed his eyes forever while Tagle held his hand. The image went viral within minutes. The entire world stopped to cry together. News anchors choked up while reporting the story. Prime ministers issued statements. The Pope himself called the hospital to speak with Tagle. But the cardinal was unreachable, lost in grief and prayer beside the still form of the child who had taught him the meaning of pure faith. But the real emotion came afterward. Tagle remained there, holding the child's hand for 3 hours after his death. He sang lullabies softly, as if the boy could still hear them. The doctors tried to convince him to leave, but he remained motionless, final guardian of a soul departing in peace. Raphael's funeral gathered thousands of people, people who had never known him, but who had been touched by his story. Tagle conducted the ceremony with absolute simplicity. There were no grandiose speeches, only the respectful silence of those who recognized the sacred. After the burial, the cardinal returned to the hospital. He went up to the rooftop and stood watching the city that stretched beyond the walls. The wooden rosary was in his hands, inheritance from a boy who lived only 7 years, but who changed the world simply by existing. St. Vincent Hospital was never the same. It became a worldwide reference in humanized care. Tagle continued living there, refusing any privilege, sleeping in his simple bed in the basement. His presence had planted a seed that germinated every day in gestures of love. The hospital's transformation was complete within a year. New wings were built, state-of-the-art equipment installed, and a scholarship program established for medical students from poor families. But more than physical changes, something deeper had occurred. The staff now approached each patient as if they might be the next Raphael, deserving of infinite dignity and care. Years later, when asked about that period, Tagle would only say that he learned from Raphael the true meaning of faith. It wasn't about spectacular miracles, but about finding God in small gestures, in hands that reach out, in hearts that open. The boy had departed, but his light remained lit in every life touched by his simplicity. Eternity, after all, fits in a plastic spoon and a child's smile. If you like this kind of story, leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the next videos.